Yellowstone. 5 million people visit every year. They photograph geysers, watch bison, and take selfies next to boiling hot springs. And almost none of them realize they're standing on the roof of the largest volcano in North America, that there's magma just a few miles beneath their feet, that in one corner of the park there's a legal loophole where any crime could technically go unpunished, that the lake here sings, and that a pond, once one of the most beautiful in the world, was destroyed by loose change. Yellowstone is the world's first national park, established in 1872. Nearly 3,500 square miles. 75% of all the geysers on Earth exist only here, nowhere else. But the real Yellowstone, the one that doesn't make it onto postcards, is far stranger. 7 secrets. Welcome to Wonderland. Most people think of Yellowstone as a park with geysers. In reality, Yellowstone is a volcano, and you're walking on its roof. Beneath the park lies a caldera measuring roughly 34 by 45 miles. It's not a crater, it's a massive collapse formed when the volcano exploded and the ground caved in on itself. The last eruption like that happened 640,000 years ago. The ash cloud blanketed half of North America. All 50 states would have been buried under anywhere from a few inches to several feet of volcanic ash. The magma was so intensely hot that the surrounding rock fused into a single solid mass across thousands of miles. The nearest pocket of magma today sits somewhere between 3 and 8 miles below the surface. It's what heats every geyser, every hot spring, every bubbling and boiling thing you see in the park. The ground here literally breathes. In some spots, it rises and falls nearly 28 inches in a single year. Scientists call it caldera breathing. Researchers say the next major eruption may never come, or it could be 100,000 years away, or sooner. No one knows. The monitoring system watching Yellowstone runs 24/7, 365 days a year, and has for decades. Meanwhile, tourists are out there snapping selfies at Old Faithful, roughly 4 miles from the center of the caldera. In the far southwestern corner of Yellowstone, straddling the border of Wyoming and Idaho, sits a roughly 50-square-mile patch of land. It's known as the Zone of Death. And that's not a dramatic nickname. It's a real legal term. In 2005, University of Michigan law professor Brian Kalt was writing a routine paper on the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The Sixth Amendment guarantees every citizen the right to a jury trial, drawn from residents of the same state and the same federal district where the crime was committed. That's when Kalt spotted the problem. Yellowstone was established in 1872, before Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana even became states. When they were admitted to the Union, the entire park was placed under the jurisdiction of the Federal District of Wyoming. But roughly 50 square miles of the park physically sit inside Idaho, and according to census records, exactly 0 people live there. Here's the trap. If someone committed a crime in that zone, the defendant could legally demand a jury made up of Idaho residents from within that same federal district. But no such people exist. You can't seat a jury. No jury means no trial. No trial means no conviction. Kalt immediately wrote to Congress. No one responded. He published his paper. Congress read it, and still did nothing. The loophole remains open to this day. As of 2026, no one has exploited it, but it's sitting right there. Yellowstone freezes over every winter, and when the ice sets in, the lake starts to sing. The earliest recorded accounts of this go back to the 1890s. Military engineer Hiram Chittenden described it in his 1895 book. The most strange and interesting acoustic phenomenon in the region, unexplained sounds in the air above the lake. He compared them to the hum of telegraph wires in the wind or the buzzing of a swarm of bees.
Other witnesses described it differently, like organ music, like metal cables striking each other, like distant singing, like the sound of a massive flock of birds passing directly overhead. The sound would approach, build, reach its peak right above the listener, then fade away into the distance. Geologist Frank Bradley, part of the 1871 survey expedition, wrote, "While cooking breakfast, every few minutes we heard a strange sound, somewhere between a whistle and the whinny of a horse. The sound grew in intensity. It was clearly a gust of wind passing overhead, though the pine trees around us didn't move at all." Researchers have proposed dozens of explanations over the years: temperature inversions, underground tremors, static electricity. None has ever been accepted as definitive. The last written accounts date to the mid-1960s. After that, silence. No official source has reported the music of the lake since. But Chittenden, a disciplined military engineer, allowed himself one moment of wonder in his book, writing, "I like to think that in the depths of Yellowstone Lake lives a mystical creature that sings in solitude." In 1926, the last wolf in Yellowstone was shot dead. The park declared, "No more predators. The elk are safe. Tourists can relax." The next 70 years showed just how badly they got that wrong. Without wolves, elk stopped being afraid. They moved down to the riverbanks and stood there for hours, grazing young willows and aspens down to the roots. The willows disappeared, and with them went the beavers, who depend on willow branches for their winter food stores. By 1995, only a single beaver colony remained in the entire park. In 1995, 14 wolves were brought in from Canada and released into Yellowstone. The elk didn't vanish, but their behavior changed completely. They stopped loitering openly along the rivers. They started moving. The willows came back. Within a few years, the beavers followed. Today, there are 9 beaver colonies in the park. Beaver dams hold water back, create pools, and stabilize riverbanks. The rivers themselves literally changed shape. They slowed down, widened, and started curving more. Otters returned, songbirds, fish. 14 wolves changed the rivers, not by direct action, but through fear. The mere presence of predators made prey move differently, and the entire landscape rearranged itself in response. Scientists call this the Ecology of Fear. Yellowstone is the living textbook. In the upper geyser basin, not far from Old Faithful, there's a hot spring called Morning Glory Pool, named after the flower. And back in the 1880s, when the first tourists laid eyes on it, the name was perfect. A flawless circle of the deepest blue, transparent all the way to the bottom. There was nothing else like it on Earth. Then people discovered it. Tourists started throwing in coins, not out of spite, just like a wishing well. Then rocks, then trash, sticks, old hats, car parts. By the 1950s, rangers were unofficially calling it the garbage can. When the first major cleanup was finally done in 1991, crews pulled thousands of coins, hundreds of objects, and even an old tire from the bottom. The debris partially blocked the hydrothermal vent. The water temperature dropped. At the lower temperature, orange and yellow bacteria, the kind that would have been cooked alive before, were able to survive and spread. The deep blue color disappeared, and it's never coming back. Today, the sign at the spring calls it the Faded Glory Pool. The most remarkable part, rangers actually ran an experiment. They triggered an artificial water surge to clear the vent and see whether the original temperature might return. The effect was minimal. The damage was permanent. Deep inside Yellowstone,
Up the trail through the Lamar Valley, there's a ravine most tourists never reach. It's named after the creek that runs through it, Cache Creek. But among park rangers, it has another name. In 1888, geologist Walter Weed, part of a U.S. Geological Survey expedition, discovered 6 bear carcasses, a bison carcass, and several smaller animals there. No visible injuries, no signs of a struggle. They were simply lying there. Weed wrote in his report, "These animals were asphyxiated by gas unfit for breathing." The gulch releases carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, heavy gases that pool near the ground in calm weather. Animals that drop their heads close to the earth inhale them before they ever detect any danger. The hot spring here is called Wob Springs, named after a fictional bear from Ernest Seton Thompson's 1899 novella, which ends with the bear coming to this very gulch, lying down in the poisonous vapors, and never getting up. In 2008, historian Jeremy Johnston hiked the trail and wrote, "At times the smell was so strong it was literally hard to breathe." The hot spring at the entrance still boils today. The trail passes it on the opposite bank of the creek, but the smell reaches you even from there. In the 1800s, somewhere between 30 and 60 million bison roamed North America. By 1902, only 23 remained in Yellowstone. 23 out of millions. The Yellowstone herd survived for one simple reason: they had always lived here. Unlike other bison populations that migrated across the Great Plains, these animals stayed in the park's valleys. When the rest of the continent's population was wiped out, they remained, simply because they never went anywhere. Sediment analysis from the lake bed shows that bison have lived in Yellowstone continuously for at least 2,300 years. They survived many ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and human settlement. They survived extermination. Today, there are roughly 5,000 bison in the park, the largest herd on public lands in the United States. They don't fear cars. They don't fear people. They walk down the roads, stop traffic, and peer through car windows.
Rangers call it a bison jam. These animals have roamed these valleys for over 2,000 years. They were here long before the first European ever set foot in North America. And, by all indications, they have no plans to leave. Yellowstone still holds far more secrets than 7. What should we uncover next? Thanks for watching, and keep exploring.